What is it about yesterday? Remember the Beatles? Yesterday all my troubles seemed so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay. I believe in yesterday. Gladys Knight and the Pips, in The Way We Were, talks about the winters were warmer, the summers were longer, and wistfully dreams of that time when we were a different way, as if looking back is looking with longing, is looking with perhaps rose-coloured spectacles. Shakespeare says in one of his famous speeches on the concept of all our yesterdays. By the way, the title of a great documentary series on ITV television when I was probably about 7 or 8. But just to expand on Shakespeare's words, and all our yesterdays have but lighted the way to dusty death. Perhaps we need to be careful about when thinking about yesterday, because so many politicians, so many leaders keep wanting to take us back to yesterday. Let's take the great conservative leaders, the leadership who want to take us back to a time when Britain was great, when we ruled the world, when we were the captains of industry and our flag flew across continents. Yesterday can make Britain great again. Yesterday can make America great again. Let's start with Britain. What if we did go back to when Britannia ruled the waves? Okay, if you're perhaps upper crust, upper class. Okay, perhaps if you own your house, you own your mansion, you have a secure future, you are part of the aristocracy, you are born into money, you have the best education possible that can be paid for by your parents, who perhaps are some serving in some colonial post somewhere or whatever. Go and believe in yesterday then. It's going to be great for you, isn't it? But not perhaps if you were a person living in conditions of Dickensian poverty. Not perhaps the yesterday if you were living after Waterloo, when you were living in a place that's become known as Peterloo, the Peterloo Massacre. And although you'd returned from the great victory at Waterloo, you'd returned from that great victory, you were being treated pretty much like many of our veterans who return from wars now, except then you had no work, you were starving, you were wounded, you were oppressed, and perhaps when we think about going back to yesterday, perhaps we might remember that children were working in cotton mills. In the days of Dickens, children were cleaning the chimneys of the rich and those able to pay. Be careful with anybody who promises to take us back to past greatness. These are promises they know they cannot fulfill. They can not only not fulfill them, but that's the great thing about promising them. They're empty promises. When you are of an age or whatever and you look back, you think, oh, it was so much better then, wasn't it? You think that. If you were even born in the 50s like me or the 60s, it's very tempting, isn't it, to watch all those nostalgic TV programmes and think that everything was so good, wasn't it? Everything was so perfect. Kids behave because if they didn't, they'd get a clip around the ear, the local bobby would drag them off somewhere. There were no strikes. Everybody got on. We all sat round with the management. Old teapot, by the way, meant to be that way. It keeps the tea a nice taste. But, we sat down and went over one of these teapots and we discussed things. That was yesterday. There were no lefties. There were no loonies. Oh, and immigration was under control. Beware. Even Johnson's election. Look at the little preamble before he's elected leader. Look at the speeches of Churchill railing on the public address system. Look at Johnson saying, well, all we need is hard work. I bring you nothing but blood, sweat, and tears. Whose blood, sweat, and tears? Certainly not the upper class. Certainly not the plutocrats. Certainly not the aristocrats who sweated in those coal mines, in industry, to produce conspicuously for those people to sell and not even get paid properly for their labour and their lives expended in service. Be very careful. Anybody who promises yesterday can't really promise anything for the future. Let us move forwards as a society, where we have a society that works for the many, not the few, where we have a society whereby people cooperate and help each other and don't profit from the suffering and the indignity of others. Yes, yesterday maybe all my troubles did seem so far away, but yesterday is not now. Let's elect and work with leaders who will genuinely reshape the future for the many, not the elite few.